and then he started getting calls and they was telling him that Tupac got shot.
The fallout between Snoop Dogg and Tupac Shakur was a heartbreaking chapter in the history of hip-hop, leading to the death of a duo that could have dominated the hip-hop world. Their once unbreakable friendship shattered under the weight of jealousy, conflicting loyalties, and misunderstandings. Now this unending mystery has just been solved with the arrest of Keefe D. Snoop Dogg and Tupac's murder.
We step off the plane. I'm like, Pop, you going to Vegas to the fight? I said, that's the last time I seen my life.
According to Suge Knight, the CEO of Death Row Records, this wasn't exactly what happened. Suge shone a spotlight on Snoop Dogg because he explained that they always attended every event together, so Snoop asking them about going to the fight rather than just going with them was suspicious. In an interview with The Collect Call, Suge opens up about Snoop's involvement with Tupac's death, outing Snoop's decisions that night.
Only way you have a radio if you was at the fight with us and you had a security detail. Now, not having a security detail, what are you doing with the radio? Two, we always go to the fight together. We always go to the club together.
Suge explained that it was weird for Snoop not to be with the trio. If Snoop wasn't with them, where was he? And what coincidence that the night he wasn't with them was the night Pac was shot? The answer to this came through Warren G on the popular Drinks Champ podcast. Warren was Snoop Dogg's friend and ex-bandmate. Warren recounted how Snoop Dogg was having a play-by-play recording of the activities happening in Vegas in a way to suggest that Snoop might have been involved in the shooting incident.
I don't know what kind of Nextel he had, but he had the motherfucker could go that whatever it was hitting him all the way from what was going on from Vegas. So they was like, we could hear the and then he started getting calls and they was telling him that Tupac got shot.
Suge Knight went ahead to say that Snoop had apparently warned Daz Dillinger, who had worked with Death Row as part of the Dog Pound group, from going to Vegas, alluding that he must have known that something was going to happen. In an interview with Vlad TV, Daz revealed that they were not on good terms with Death Row by the time of Tupac's shooting. They was trying to get us to go to Vegas. We was like, Dog Pound, we was really on our Death Row. Daz mentioned that by the time of Pac's death, Death Row was already boiling with issues with its artists and management. The artists felt like the management wasn't paying them their worth, and that simmered through the artists, creating a bad attitude at work and fights over money and attitudes. This was after Dr. Dre had left the company and Tupac had already joined the label, but why would Snoop Dogg want Tupac dead? For us to understand the dynamics of these two friendships, we have to go back to the beginning. It all goes back to the mid-90s when Death Row Records reigned supreme in the world of hip-hop, and at the heart of this powerhouse label were two iconic figures, Snoop Dogg and Tupac Shakur. Their friendship and musical collaborations captivated audiences, but behind the scenes, a tale of jealousy and rivalry was brewing. Let's rewind to the early days. Snoop Dogg, a talented rapper from Long Beach, California, burst onto the scene with his smooth flow and laid-back style. Growing up in the streets of Compton, California, where gang violence was rampant, Snoop quickly developed ties to the notorious Crips gang and began his journey as a rapper at a young age. His talent and proficiency as a rapper caught the attention of record labels, leading to his signing with Death Row Records despite the controversy surrounding the label's association with Suge Knight. After signing with Death Row Records in 1992, Snoop Dogg released his debut album, Doggy Style, later that same year. The album became an instant hit, selling over 10 million copies worldwide and establishing Snoop Dogg as one of the leading figures in rap music. Songs like Gin and Juice and What's My Name became classics and solidified his place as a pioneer in the world of rap. His debut album and exemplary performances solidified his status as a rising star in the rap game. At this time, Snoop was now the face of Death Row Records, and with his record-selling albums, he was definitely one to watch. His ability to blend genres successfully, and as well as his unique sound and poetic lyrics, resonated with audiences around the world, propelling him to superstardom. But that quickly came to a halt in 1995 when a young lad entered the scene. This was none other than Tupac Shakur. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, Tupac Shakur was making waves with his raw lyricism and powerful storytelling. Born in Harlem, New York, Tupac's magnetic presence and controversial persona quickly propelled him to the forefront of the industry. With Tupac Shakur's powerful lyrics and thought-provoking messages and Snoop Dogg's unique flow and laid-back style, it was only a matter of time before their paths would intertwine. And when they did, it was nothing short of legendary. It was during this time that Snoop Dogg and Tupac's paths crossed. Their collaboration on the hit song 2 of America's Most Wanted showcased their undeniable chemistry and solidified their bond as friends and collaborators. As Death Row Records welcomed Tupac into its roster, Snoop Dogg found himself sharing the spotlight with a force to be reckoned with. Tupac's arrival brought a new level of intensity and excitement to the label, captivating audiences with his raw talent and unapologetic persona. Together, they became the dynamic duo of Death Row, captivating audiences with their electrifying performances and chart-topping hits. Their friendship seemed unbreakable, and fans couldn't get enough of their undeniable chemistry. But it turns out that with great success comes great jealousy. Behind the scenes, Snoop Dogg couldn't escape the feeling of being overshadowed by Tupac's immense success. While he had achieved his own level of stardom, Tupac's larger-than-life persona and constant media attention cast a shadow over Snoop's accomplishments. This hit the wrong nerve with Snoop, who had already built a house with Death Row and represented the whole West Coast. According to several recounts, Snoop started feeling jealous of Tupac as he was slowly taking the shine away from him in Death Row. In an interview with The Art of Dialogue, Low MB, a former signee of Death Row, stated that the record label started shifting its dynamics after Pac started rising.
When Snoop beat that case, that's when the dynamics started changing. You start hearing about Suge leaving, and then Pac was slowly but surely, you could say, taking over, because he the hottest thing smoking right now. Snoop is cool, but he ain't got no new record. Tupac got all new coming right. It's hitting you all upside your head.
He wasn't the only one. In a revealing interview with Napoleon of the Outlaws, a member of Tupac's group, he shed light on Snoop Dogg's jealousy. Napoleon suggested that Snoop may have felt his own shine being dimmed by Tupac's presence in Death Row. The constant mention of Tupac's name, even years after his tragic death, only added fuel to the fire of Snoop's envy.
Imagine if you, the biggest star on Death Row, and Pac come and take all your shine. You understand? And 25 years later, Pac died, and every time you do an interview, that name is brought up. So maybe he's just trying to take that shine from Pac.
As time went on, the strain in Snoop Dogg and Tupac's friendship became more apparent. Conflicting opinions and personal choices created a rift between the two, leading to a breakdown in their once unbreakable bond. In interviews, Snoop Dogg himself acknowledged the changing dynamics between him and Tupac. He spoke of their friendship turning sour in the days leading up to Tupac's untimely death. Differences in their views on certain individuals and incidents caused a rift that couldn't be easily repaired. The infamous East Coast-West Coast rivalry that plagued the hip-hop scene in the 1990s put their friendship to the test. As tensions escalated between the two coasts, Tupac and Snoop Dogg found themselves caught in the crossfire. One of the key turning points was when Snoop Dogg, in a recent interview, referred to fellow rappers Biggie Smalls and Puff Daddy as his homeboys. This seemingly innocent comment deeply hurt Tupac, who felt betrayed by Snoop's choice of words.
Biggie Smalls, he's an artist that I listen to his music, I love his work. There's no beef, it's nothing personal. I don't hate him and I don't disrespect him, and I love what he do, you know what I'm saying? And it's just me, I'm just a smooth, peaceful individual. I don't have beef with nobody right now.
Tupac saw this as disloyalty because, according to the gang culture, my enemies are your enemies, and because Snoop announced that he didn't have a problem with Tupac's enemies, he had definitely just become an enemy. The line was drawn and sides were picked, but Snoop Dogg still insisted that the rivalry didn't make any sense and that they were friends before they had beef.
We all used to hang out. I love Biggie and I love Pac, and both of them love me. So how I look saying Biggie?
Yeah.
Because I'm with Pac. We was on the same.
Yeah.
They rapping the same. We rapping, we got the same struggle, the same hustle. Why the we can't get along?
He continued to say that he respects the game and doesn't allow his pride to take precedence, but the atmosphere had already changed.
But his aggression was towards me. So because I said I'm cool with Puffy and Biggie doing the interview with you, Tupac took it as if I wasn't down with him no more, as if I was side busted, as if I was scared. Death Row looked at me as like a traitor.
The next time Tupac saw Snoop, he completely ignored him, a clear indication that their friendship had been fractured. This encounter would be their last before Tupac's tragic death, leaving their unresolved issues forever unresolved.
He had already survived one near-fatal shooting, but he couldn't survive a second. Rap star Tupac Shakur died last night after a brief life in a rough business. He was 25.
Another instance was at the height of the East Coast-West Coast beef after rapper Tupac had released the diss song Hit 'Em Up, and yet again the once friends had already taken sides of this duel. Tensions had been increasing between Snoop and Tupac, especially after Snoop expressed his dislike for Tupac's scathing diss track, Hit 'Em Up. This came right in the middle of the East Coast-West Coast beef, and Snoop had already announced that he did not want any beef with anyone, and he was trying to preach the message of peace. While Hit 'Em Up was used as a diss track, Snoop wasn't happy about it, and he had already started to distance himself from the group. At the time, Snoop claimed that he didn't want any controversy, and he didn't understand why they couldn't hang out with Biggie and Puffy anymore. He confronted Tupac about the song, revealing his disapproval and further straining their relationship. Even when he played the video for me to Hit 'Em Up, even when he played Hit 'Em Up, the song I didn't like the song, he continued to say that he didn't understand why Pac was raffling up the feathers for more violence at a time when he had already been attacked and gunned down once, and the temperatures were hot. I didn't like it. I didn't like this. It wasn't the to me. Like, you buying more problems, cuh. You buying problems. Gangsters is everywhere. They make them everywhere. Tupac, who saw the song as a powerful response to his enemies, Hit 'Em Up was a direct attack to Biggie and his associates, accusing them of betrayal and deceit. The lyrics were filled with anger and resentment, reflecting the deep wounds that had been inflicted on their friendship. Pac felt that Snoop's disapproval was a betrayal. He believed that Snoop should have stood by him and not questioned his artistic choices, especially when there was a clear-cut line in hip-hop over the East Coast-West Coast beef. And Pac, being the front runner representing the West, he felt that Snoop should have supported him more, and this act would lead to the untimely end of their cordial relationship and soon Pac's life.
We step off the plane. I'm like, Pac, you going to Vegas to the fight? I said, that's the last time I seen my
3 days later, Tupac was gunned down and killed in a drive-by shooting as he was leaving the club in Las Vegas on September 7, 1996, further fueling the East Coast-West Coast beef. But what really started the deadly East Coast-West Coast beef? East Coast-West Coast beef. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the hip-hop scene was ablaze with a bitter rivalry between the East Coast and West Coast. This clash of coasts was fueled by a clash of styles, egos, and territorial disputes. Hip-hop music and culture is widely recognized as having originated on the East Coast of the United States, particularly in the vibrant streets of New York City. In the 1970s, a cultural movement began to emerge in the Bronx, where DJs like Kool Herc and Africa Bambaataa pioneered the art of spinning records and hosting block parties. These gatherings became the birthplace of hip-hop, a genre that would revolutionize the music industry. As hip-hop gained momentum, it became a powerful form of expression for marginalized communities, giving a voice to those who had been silenced for far too long. Artists like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Run DMC, and LL Cool J paved the way for the East Coast hip-hop scene, establishing New York City as the epicenter of the genre. By the late 1980s, however, a new wave of hip-hop was emerging on the West Coast, led by groundbreaking acts such as NWA hailing from Compton, California. NWA brought a raw and unapologetic style to the genre, addressing social and political issues that resonated with their audience. Tracks like Straight Outta Compton and F the Police became anthems for a generation that felt unheard and oppressed. The West Coast hip-hop scene quickly gained traction, with artists like Ice-T, Too Short, and Eazy-E solidifying its presence. The sound was characterized by its heavy bass lines, catchy hooks, and gritty storytelling. West Coast rappers embraced their regional identity, proudly representing their neighborhoods and communities. The rise of West Coast hip-hop posed a challenge to the dominance of the East Coast scene, which had long been considered the birthplace and epicenter of the genre. This shift in power created a sense of rivalry and competition between the two coasts, as artists on both sides sought to assert their dominance and prove the superiority of their respective hip-hop cultures. In 1991, the rivalry took a new turn when Bronx rapper Tim Dog released his album Penicillin on Wax. The album contained several skits that mocked West Coast artists and included a diss track directed at the members of NWA, including Dr. Dre, entitled Compton. This provocative release set the stage for the brewing tensions between the East Coast and West Coast. The following year, Suge Knight, a native of Compton and a Blood Gang member, co-founded Death Row Records in Los Angeles. Knight, along with Dr. Dre, Dick Griffey, and the DOC, aimed to create a platform that would showcase the talent and creativity of West Coast artists. Death Row Records quickly became a force to be reckoned with, signing artists like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac Shakur. Suge Knight's involvement in the West Coast hip-hop scene was fueled by a sense of frustration and irritation towards the perceived condescension from the East Coast. The success of Death Row Records and the rise of West Coast hip-hop challenged the long-standing notion that New York City was the mecca of hip-hop. As the rivalry between the East Coast and West Coast intensified, it set the stage for a clash of titans that would captivate the music industry and fans around the world. The East Coast, with artists like Nas, Jay-Z, and the Notorious Big, was considered the birthplace of the genre and had established itself as the epicenter of hip-hop culture. However, the West Coast, led by artists like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac Shakur, was rising in prominence and challenging the East Coast's dominance. Tensions between the two coasts began to escalate when Pac felt disrespected by certain East Coast artists. He believed that they were undermining the West Coast's contributions to hip-hop and were not giving him the recognition he deserved. This sense of frustration and perceived disrespect fueled Shakur's desire to assert himself and defend the West Coast. The feud between Shakur and the notorious Big, also known as Biggie Smalls, was one of the most high-profile conflicts within the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. The two artists were once close friends, but their relationship soured over time, leading to a bitter and highly publicized feud. The origins of their conflict are complex and multifaceted, with factors such as personal jealousy, artistic competition, and the influence of their respective entourages playing a role. The height of this rivalry, we must go back to an incident that happened on November 30th, 1994, but first let's get into their beginning. In the early days of their careers, Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls shared a genuine friendship and a deep respect for each other's talent. Tupac, born and raised in New York City, burst onto the music scene in 1991 with his debut album Tupacalypse Now. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Biggie Smalls was making equal waves in Brooklyn. As their popularity grew, Tupac and Biggie found themselves drawn to each other's music and style. They saw in each other a kindred spirit, someone who understood the struggles and aspirations of being a young artist in the rap game. Their friendship blossomed, and they often discussed their dreams of collaborating on a project together. What made their bond even stronger was the mutual respect they had for each other's craft. Tupac admired Biggie's storytelling ability and his ability to paint vivid pictures with his lyrics. Biggie, in turn, recognized Tupac's raw energy and his ability to connect with audiences on a deeply emotional level. Their friendship was not just limited to music. Tupac and Biggie would often hang out together, sharing laughs and stories about their lives. They were like brothers, supporting each other through the ups and downs of their respective careers. In 1994, their relationship became sour after a shooting incident. Tupac, a rising star from the West Coast, found himself in the lobby of Quad recording studios in Manhattan. As Tupac made his way to meet fellow rapper and friend Biggie Smalls in one of the recording rooms, he was suddenly ambushed by three men. They shot, beat, and robbed him, leaving him wounded and shaken. Tupac believed that Biggie had prior knowledge of the attack, a betrayal that would forever change their relationship. The trust between the two friends was shattered, and their relationship took a dark and bitter turn. Tupac, known for his outspoken nature, openly accused Biggie of being involved in the assault. He vehemently claimed that Biggie had betrayed their friendship and had a hand in orchestrating the attack. Biggie, on the other hand, vehemently denied any involvement and maintained his innocence. This incident marked a turning point in the relationship between Tupac and Biggie. What was once a friendship built on mutual respect and admiration quickly turned into a bitter rivalry. The East Coast-West Coast divide deepened, and the hip-hop community found itself divided along geographical lines. It's important to note that Tupac was a West Coast rapper associated with the Bloods gang, while Biggie, who had gained mainstream success, was an East Coast rapper associated with the Crips gang. This added another layer of tension to their already strained relationship. The Quad recording studios incident not only fractured the friendship between Tupac and Biggie, but also intensified the existing animosity between the East Coast and West Coast hip-hop scenes. The media, always hungry for a sensational story, sensationalized the feud, pitting the two coasts against each other in a battle for supremacy. The rivalry between Tupac and Biggie became emblematic of the larger East Coast-West Coast beef. It was no longer just about two individuals. It was about the clash of two distinct hip-hop cultures, each vying for dominance and recognition. The feud between Tupac and Biggie was further fueled by their respective record labels. Tupac was signed to Death Row Records, headed by Marion Suge Knight, a powerful figure in the music industry. Biggie, on the other hand, was signed to Bad Boy Records, led by Sean Diddy Combs, another influential figure. Knight and Combs, both known for their strong personalities and business acumen, became central figures in East Coast-West Coast beef. Their rivalry and the competition between their record labels only added fuel to the fire, intensifying the animosity between Tupac and Biggie. As the feud escalated, diss tracks were released, each rapper taking shots at the other through their music. The lyrics became increasingly personal and confrontational, with both Tupac and Biggie using their songs as a platform to express their anger and frustration. The shooting intensified the animosity between Tupac and Biggie, leading to a series of diss tracks and public feuds. Tupac released the infamous song Hit 'Em Up, where he directly called out Biggie and his associates, accusing them of betrayal betrayal and deceit. The lyrics were filled with anger and resentment, reflecting the deep wounds that had been inflicted on their friendship. Biggie, on the other hand, released Who Shot Ya, a track that most people believe was aimed at Tupac. However, Biggie was adamant that the track was not addressed to Pac, but he was just portraying a young drug dealer's turf war against an older drug dealer. The media plagued the fans with sensational headlines and tabloid stories, further fueling the rivalry, creating a narrative of violence and hostility. The public became enthralled by the drama, eagerly taking sides and fueling the flames of the feud. But amidst the chaos and animosity, it's important to remember that there were many artists and individuals who sought to bridge the divide between the East Coast and West Coast. They recognized the destructive nature of the beef and the toll it was taking on the hip-hop community. Unfortunately, their efforts were overshadowed by the sensationalism and the tragic events that would unfold in the years to come. The East Coast-West Coast beef would ultimately claim the lives of two of the most influential figures in hip-hop history. The feud between Shakur and the Notorious Big had a profound impact on the hip-hop community. It divided fans and artists alike, with allegiances being drawn along regional lines. The rivalry became a symbol of the larger cultural and social tensions between the East Coast and the West Coast. It was no longer just about the music. It became a battle for dominance and respect. Tragically, the feud between Shakur and the Notorious Big came to a devastating end. On September 7th, 1996, Shakur was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. The circumstances surrounding his death remain a subject of speculation and conspiracy theories. Just 6 months later, on March 9th, 1997, the Notorious Big was also fatally shot in Los Angeles. The deaths of Shakur and the Notorious Big sent shockwaves through the music industry and marked the tragic end of an era. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry, which had once been fueled by artistic competition, had now turned deadly. The loss of these two iconic figures left a void in the hip-hop community that has yet to be filled. In the aftermath of their deaths, there were calls for an end to the East Coast-West Coast feud. Artists and fans alike recognized the destructive nature of the rivalry and the toll it had taken on the music community. The deaths of Shakur and the Notorious Big served as a wake-up call, reminding everyone of the importance of unity and collaboration within the hip-hop community. If you enjoyed this video, click on the boxes playing on your screen to watch similar content.